yeah, we've got me and Garth. Really excited to have Garth joining us and showing us what PayCat does and how it works, and how it's different from our integration with Xero, and yeah, what we do. So this is what we're covering today. We're going to show you exactly how you would set up a roster in ShiftCare and how that roster, how that pay timesheets will go over to pay your staff for all the different kinds of shifts that you're going to roster, all the allowances that need to be paid, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is just an example of some of the stuff that we're going to be covering. All right, so look, I'm not a big man on slides. I don't really do slides too much. I prefer to just jump straight into ShiftCare itself and show you guys the real deal. So this is a roster that we've sort of made up, and we've made it up to be as complicated and have all sorts of different types of shifts and everything that we can think of that we wanted to cover, so that when we do the export to PayCat, you can see how it deals with that. So I'm going to cover a few of the different kinds of shifts, and I think probably the first one to talk about is sleepovers, because we all know sleepovers are fun. Trying to work out how to roster them in ShiftCare and how to make them go over properly to your payroll system. Look, you still need to do your sleepovers as 3 separated shifts. So you are going to have a shift for the active work before a sleepover. So for example, up here for Edna, there's a shift here from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. And then you've got this shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then you've got the morning portion of that shift after that. And so you will need to separate them out. That is obviously because we need to know what time they're sleeping to make sure that we can separate that out. Other than that, though, there's not much else that you need to do. You need to mark the sleepover shift with the shift type of sleepover. The other 2 shifts, you will just put them as regular sort of personal care or whatever shift type you use for that. You also can put in awake times. So when we talk about awake times, it is possible to add allowances for awake times. So if a staff member said to you after the shift, hey, I woke up, and in this example, I woke up for 2 hours and 15 minutes, you would then add an allowance for awake 2 hours and 15 minutes to that shift. That's how you'll tell ShiftCare that someone woke up during their sleepover. And then that will then get moved over, and Garth will cover that in the webinar in his section where he shows you how that does that over in there. Another thing too, and Garth is going to cover this in his part of it, but you know, we all know, I'm sure we all know that a sleepover shift requires a 4-hour period of awake time before or after the shift. And so in this example we have here 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. and whatever, we've deliberately not made that 4 hours to show you what it does, and that it will actually pick that up and adjust the pay as needed. So that's that side of it. We also have an active night shift. So this is a shift over here for Edna, 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. So again, there's nothing really too special that we need to do with that. You just need to create a shift with the times that start and finish. I think this one is particularly interesting, the Friday night one, because probably anyone who's watched my webinar on Xero and knows a bit about how ShiftCare with SCHADS and everything works, is that ShiftCare would look at this shift, the 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift, and it would say, okay, well, that shift finishes at Saturday, so therefore the whole shift's paid at the Saturday rate. But actually the 9 p.m. to midnight of the Friday is paid at the night rate for Monday to Friday, and the 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. is paid on the Saturday. So that's why we chose this shift to put in, because it's going to show you how PayCat will split that out properly and will pay that. And you don't have to create 2 separated shifts, which is what you would have to do with our integration with Xero. Broken shift allowances. So we've put in a staff member here with with broken shifts. Actually, they're kind of everywhere, but we can see here that Edna's got 2 shifts with that would pay a broken shift allowance. You don't have to do anything in ShiftCare. So you don't have to, one of the things with Xero and one of the things that I think is tricky is the person doing the rostering has to be like a SHADS expert and know that you have to add a broken shift allowance to the second shift or something to make sure that they get paid that allowance. With PayCat, you don't need to. Just having 2 shifts in the same day will trigger off a broken shift allowance. And so Garth will cover that for us later. And here on the public holiday, we've actually got 3 shifts in one day, which of course is a maximum on a SHADS, on the SHADS Award. So we'll see that it'll pay them the broken shift allowance, the higher, the 2 breaks version of that. Exceeding weekly hours. So we can see here that Montgomery Burns has 50 hours in a week, which is in excess of the 38 hours of the SHADS Award. So we're going to see that that's going to just automatically pick that up when the payroll is sent over. Exceeding daily hours. This shift here for groundskeeper Willie is a 16-hour shift. So we're going to see that that's going to pick that up and pay overtime correctly based on the fact that the shift is too long. We've got on call on here as well. So you'll see that we've got groundskeeper Willie is on call during the week. And even when he is on call here, he actually had to do a phone call and do some work. So he logged his 30-minute remote work on there. So we're going to show how that comes across as well. And of course, I already mentioned public holiday. We've put in a public holiday here for Anzac Day. So we're going to show that that obviously picks that up as well. So that pretty much covers all the, we like to think this is covering a really good portion of all the different kinds of weird things that SHADS requires you to do. And so, yeah, from here, I'm going to hand over to my good friend Garth and let him show you. Oh, I guess I should probably mention, like you guys already know, you go to the timesheet report and you would need to approve the shifts. So I'll go to next week. So normally what you would do from a timesheet perspective is your staff are going to be clocking in and clocking out, and you're going to be approving your shifts based on clock in and out times or rostered times. And you would approve your shifts as per normal. And then you would then export to PayCat. So yeah, I think Garth, unless you think I've missed anything, good for you to go.
I think that's good. I probably just touch on as well that some of those shifts have mileage, like kilometre allowances, and be able to look at that as well.
Yeah, so we can see here Monty Burns here, he's got 171 kilometres. So I added a bunch of mileage to all his shifts.
Yeah,
cool.
Perfect.
All right, I'll stop sharing and let you take over.
No worries, I'll share my side of things. So just while I do this, I just wanted to quickly thank ShiftCare and Paul and the team for allowing us to show you guys this. I know it's a hot topic on how do we get these beautiful timesheets into something that's SHADS compliant. What we're doing today is sort of taking on the challenge of being a CFO or a financial controller or something like that, or often in a small business, it's just somebody that does it on the side, right? Like you just get lumped with payroll and we have to do that. And a lot of systems out there aren't capable of calculating the SHADS award properly. So what we developed was a set of award templates that's actually been independently legally reviewed and they're compliant with the SHADS award. So in other words, you're bringing in your ShiftCare timesheets and you're getting a SHADS award compliant payslip off the back of that. So that's what we're going to show you today. We're going to take you through that process from start to finish. So hopefully you can see my ShiftCare screen in front of you. What we would do to kick things off, as Paul just alluded to, is we go to the timesheet screen, pick the week. So I need to go to next week. And then with this little download arrow here, we'd pick key pay and we'd pick in real terms, approved timesheets only. So the ones that you've actually approved. I'm going to choose all hours today. And as you're probably aware, if you've done that before, you get a notification flag to say the timesheet export's been complete. I get this little message and now I can download that file. So that's pretty much it from ShiftCare's perspective at this point. I'll just go back to the schedule to reference it later. What we would do here is we've now built a Google Sheets extension that we call the ShiftCare PayCat timesheet importer. And what this does, it takes that file in that we've just downloaded, potentially flags it for any potential issues you might have with importing, and then imports it automatically straight away from from Sheets. So you don't actually have to go into the payroll file and import it. It's going to all happen from here. So the way we get this working is we go to the extensions menu. Oh, my apologies. We import the file first. So I'm going to go to File, Import. And I'm just going to upload that file that we just downloaded. So I've got that here. If you've used Google Sheets before, this might be familiar to you. So we're going to replace the current sheet we got, which is blank, and click Import. And that gives us the time and attendance data that we need. So that's what's come out of ShiftCare. Now, what we're going to do with this script, it does convert a lot of this stuff. So it's going to, for example, put mileage and kilometre allowances on their own line, dedicated. We're going to get sleepovers working as like an 8-hour shift that goes from, in this case, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., not 10 to 10. And you can see we're also mapping it to clients. So we're actually going to be able to give you shift by shift payroll costing on what payroll's costing on each client as it goes in as well. So it's going to do a few handy things. The way we get that working is we're going to go to extensions, go to our importer, and we can do a preview. And what that will do is just give us a chance to look and diagnose any potential issues before we import. So it might be that we haven't, put an ID in for a particular employee or something like that. It's going to give us an opportunity to look at those things. In this case, I don't have any issues. It's a fresh import, so I'm happy with that. And now I'm going to go back to that menu and go import timesheets. So it's now bringing this data in from what we had. So you can see things like work during sleepover has now become a shift, and sleepover shifts themselves are now, starting at 10 and finishing off later. Remote work on call, it's all mapped to work types and things like that. So not a lot of work we've had to do so far other than sort of get the roster shaped the way it should look and bring those timesheets through. So now we're going to go to the payroll file and run our pay run. So I'm going to go to pay runs, new pay run. We've got a weekly pay schedule. So actually also going to look at overtime on a weekly basis when we look at Montgomery a little bit later. We're going to run this to the 28th and we will pay it. Let's pay it Monday on the 29th. It's found those 34 timesheets that we just imported. So we're going to go create. Now at this point, it's actually doing all the processing. It's actually working out all the award calculations and everything like this as it's doing this little load up screen. So it's doing a lot of heavy lifting for us at the moment. Okay. So what we might do, we might just go through and look at some of the interpretations of some of the shifts that Paul just took us through a little bit earlier. So we'll start with Edna. So Edna was probably the most complicated of all the ones that we set up. So you'll notice that she worked 2 shifts on the Monday, and this led to a broken shift allowance being applied. So let's have a quick look at that. You can see down here, there's a unit of broken shift allowance with 1 unpaid break. So it's the lesser of the 2 rates that we had to pay there. So on Tuesday, Edna had a sleepover shift, and she's getting shift work for the time worked on either side of the sleepover. So you'll see that as we go through there. So you recall that on the sleepover shift, we've marked some of that as actually, I'll tell a lie. If we go to the public holiday, so the 25th, we've actually got 3 shifts there on the public holiday. So that being the case, there are actually 2 unpaid breaks. And when we go down to the broken shift allowance, it's actually paying the higher rate of the 2. So it's recognized that there's 2 unpaid breaks on that day between those shifts. Also on the public holiday, they're getting the public holiday rates at a higher rate of pay. Finally, we had, as Paul said, we had that Friday shift that crossed over between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. So 3 hours of that went to night shift, which was late at night. And the other parts were after midnight, and that falls into the Saturday shift. And finally, we had that Sunday shift in there as well. So the reason why we're not showing the sleepover shift at the moment is we leave the sleepover shifts as unapproved time and let you guys approve it. And the reason for that is you might want to potentially edit the just move to that week, you might potentially want to edit the work during sleepover shift here, because it may not have happened between 12:52 and 3:07. We're just sticking that right in the middle of the sleepover. So you have the option of modifying that if you like. I'm just going to go and approve that. And we might just re-import them so we can see that interpretation as well. So let's go back to Edna. And we'll go actions or timesheets. Cool. So now what we've got is on the 23rd, let's just reference this back to ShiftCare, okay? So we had 7 to 10 p.m. and then we woke up, we had 6 to 8:30 a.m. and we had a sleepover shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So they were the work either side of it, and this was the long sleepover shift. Within that shift, we had to wake up and do 2.25 hours of work. So if we go back and have a look at the payroll, we have 7 to 10 for 3 hours paid at night shift. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, and I'm going to go have a look at when we woke up. We did 6 a.m. to 8:30. We had 2.5 hours here, also night shift. Now, one of the things that's assessed is that when we work either side of a night shift, the award says that we need to either on one side or the other apply a 4-hour minimum shift. So the employee needs to get 4 hours minimum pay. What we've done here is we've topped up an hour because this 3-hour shift didn't cut the 4-hour minimum. This 2.5-hour shift didn't cut the 4-hour minimum either. So we've chosen the 3-hour one because it's the longer of the two, and we've added 1 hour of top up to that to give them the 4-hour minimum. Now, what happens during the sleepover part itself? You don't see a timesheet for it, but you see that we're paying 1 unit of sleepover allowance down the bottom. And then when we go back up, and this is the interesting part, so when we go back up to the part where we were awake, the award says that we need to pay that at overtime rates. So here, because it's a weekday, we have 2 hours at time and a half and a quarter of an hour at double time. So in other words, the first 2 hours are paid at time and a half and double time thereafter. Because that overtime shift also exceeded an hour of pay, we've also included an overtime meal allowance for Edna as well. So I'm going to get you guys to do something. Before I move on to the next one, I have a colleague here that swears by this. When he does demos with clients and stuff, he gets them to applaud. So if you guys sort of can feel that this would have been a very difficult shift, I want you to go into the chat box at the moment and just do the applause emoji for me. Seeing how this has been all automated is a huge time saver for people that have to run this and a burden with running payroll and doing the SCHADS Award manually, okay? So that's Edna. We're going to tick her off. The next one is going to be groundskeeper Willie. Now, Willie had an interesting week because most of his week was on call. Let's go back and reference that in ShiftCare as well. So you can see that a lot of these shifts were just on-call shifts. It didn't actually work. It didn't really work till Friday, actually. And he did a remote work on-call shift. So he's, in other words, taking a phone call or something while he's been at home. So what we've done here for groundskeeper Willie is we've brought those timesheets in, and where we've worked, like this half-an-hour shift, we're paying that at ordinary rates. Likewise, he's done night shift. He's worked a very long shift on Saturday. So he's done a 16-hour shift on Saturday. We know that the award says I've got to get overtime after 10 hours. So again, we've got overtime at time and a half and overtime at 4 hours at double time, split up like that on the Saturday. But let's just look at the on-call allowances as well. Just by saying it's on call, we've recognized whether it's going to be a weekday or a public holiday or a weekend, and we're paying the appropriate rate of pay for that. So we're actually analyzing what on-call rate it should be at. The overtime meal allowance is in there again because he did more than an hour of OT. In fact, he did more than 4 hours of OT, so he's getting that twice. Very good. Moving along, we have Mo. Mo had a pretty straightforward week. So we just go back and have a look. Here, so there was a sleepover at the start of the week, followed by some ordinary work on Wednesday. The same thing continues from public holidays all the way through to the weekend. So we'll have a look at how that looks. We've got our night shift. We've also recognised that, hey, an hour of work ain't 4 hours of work, so we need to add 3 hours to it. And we're getting the sleepover allowance paid down here as well. When we do work, we're getting ordinary hours of pay, except for the public holiday shift, where we're getting the public holiday rates again for Anzac Day. When we get to the weekend, we're showing that we've got weekend penalty rates applying automatically as well for Saturday and Sunday. Finally, with Monty Burns, the thing we wanted to demonstrate here is that, you know, you can work so much in a week or a fortnight that you get what we call period overtime as well. So this is where we've gone over a period that we've set. You can decide as a business whether that's weekly or fortnightly, usually aligns with your pay cycle. What we've got here is 5 shifts. They're all 10 hours of length. So in total, he's worked 50 hours. When we break down his pay, as we'd expect, we've got ordinary hours. When we hit the 8th hour on the public holiday, so in other words, on that 8th hour on the Thursday, we've actually worked our 38th hour of the week. And at that point, our overtime calculation kicks in. So at 5 p.m. on that Anzac Day shift, it becomes overtime. We have 2 hours of public holiday overtime. It moves into the next day. So we're Friday now, where we've got 2 hours of time and a half and 8 hours of double time. We mentioned mileage before. So there were mileage shifts applied to Montgomery as well. So we're showing you here that we're actually dividing it over 2 lines. You can see we've got up to the ATO limit and above the ATO limit. And what these are, the award rate's $96. The ATO says, look, it's only tax-free if it's 85 cents, not 96 cents. So we're dividing those 2 things up just so we can get tax right for the employee as well automatically. We've got 2 employees that we didn't pay here as well. So that's a quick demonstration. So what have we done so far? We're inside of a pay run. We're in review stage straight away. I mean, that's the first thing I want to point out. If we had an employee, or if we had Fair Work come knocking on our door, and they want to know how I've interpreted that pay run, I guess it's an awkward conversation to have if it's been done on a spreadsheet or back of an envelope or something like that. One of the greatest features I like about this system is that we have this map back to award clauses. So if I went back to Edna and I click on this blue bar, what you can see here is that we've got broken shift allowances are being applied to that first shift on the Monday. So we're applying clause 20.12 to work that out. And I can go back to the award and read clause 20.12 and help understand and help somebody independently understand why we've calculated that the way we have. I think that's critical to being able to stay compliant is sort of show and prove your results like we used to do in high school maths. You know, you can do all this stuff and you say, okay, here's my proof. Here's how we did it. And it ties back to the award clauses. Some things we didn't cover today. So some things like scenarios like excursions, 24-hour care shifts. You might be an employee who works across different sectors in the same week. So they might do home care and then do a bit of SACS or something like that. And things like time between shifts. So you might have a permanent employee who hasn't had a sufficient break since their sleepover ended or their previous shift ended. All these things we dynamically handle as well. We didn't include that in the demo today, but they're the types of things that we can handle simply just by feeding us shifts with an appropriate shift type. And something to bear in mind, as I said earlier, is that what we've done here is we've taken raw timesheet data and we've interpreted it based on our SCHADS Award engine. And that SCHADS Award engine has been independently verified by industrial lawyers. So they've actually done rigorous testing on it, signed it off and got Fair Work rulings and stuff and signed it off and said, yep, if you use this as intended, you're going to get a SCHADS compliant result, which is really, really powerful. It's the first in the industry that's ever actually happened. So if you feel like there's a lot of confusion out there, you know, we have a lot of clients that just place 100% of the reliance of trust in the results they're getting in, and they have no problems with payroll. So it's one of its kind in the marketplace. And the best part is, the thing I want to say about the workflow is if you're used to using a zero payroll or something like that that's out there, what you'll find is that you may import the timesheets in, and then there's a manual process to get the payroll done. So you have to actually sit there and interpret it. You might be using a spreadsheet to do that or something like that. So with this, we're in review mode straight away. Like I haven't actually done any calculation here. I'm just having a look at what it is. And after a while, you get to trust that result. So you can actually pick up a lot of efficiency on payday. So if you, one of the, and I'll show you guys a slide later, but one of the surveys we did of clients is that if you had, for example, 50 employees, this sort of process might take about 15 or 20 minutes once a week or once a fortnight, depending on how often you're doing it. Okay. So it's very, very good result. If it's taking a day out of your office at the moment or something like that, it's you're going to pick up a lot of efficiency. So we're going to finalize a pay run. One of the things that I want to mention is this is a replacement of zero payroll. So not zero, but zero payroll. Likewise, MYOB, if you're using MYOB, it's a replacement of the payroll module of MYOB, not the accounting side of MYOB. So we're actually going to send payslips out from this system, right? So we're going to go finalize pay run. We're going to send a journal into Xero. So what we're doing is we're sort of saying to the non-accountants out there, we're saying, here is the cost of this pay run represented in Xero. It's not recreating the payroll in Xero. It's just making an accounting entry. We're going to make the payslips available to employees, and we're going to send out notifications. Now, the other things that would happen is we'd also have the opportunity to download an ABA file, which we can use to upload to internet banking and pay this as a batch. And we'd also be able to lodge single touch payroll with the government at this step. This is just a demo file, so I don't have those features turned on, but they can happen now at the same time. So I'm going to go finalize. All my pay slips have been sent to my employees. We'll have a look at that in a sec. And we're sending that record to Xero to say what happened. So if I have a quick look at the pay slips, there they are. This is the type of thing that Edna might see. This is sort of the extended view of what we have, but it's showing you shift by shift what we've calculated by pay category. So you can turn that off and you just show a consolidated line as well if it's a bit noisy. But it's showing you shift notes and everything like that that's come through from the client, what client we're working on, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the level of detail they get, maximum level of detail they get on a payslip. The other thing I want to show you guys is Xero, which might seem a little odd, but what we're going to do is we're going to go this quarter in Xero and see what our financial results mean. Just might have to log back in. It's timed me out. Now, one of the things you'll remember, just while it's having a think, I just have to refresh that. One of the things that you guys might remember me saying is that we're actually dividing up our costs by client. In other words, wages, super, allowances, penalty rates, everything like that will all be broken up by client based on what client we're working on, the hour we incur that cost. So what I'm showing you here is actually an example of a report you can get out of Xero, where if we're tracking each of our clients' costs in Xero as well, we can see, for example, what wages and what super were, and even motor vehicle expenses, what these things were against what we build out to each of these clients in the tracking categories. So it's a really useful and powerful analysis you can do just by having it set up properly. And we've achieved that by using, the ShiftCare, the ShiftCare client, which is an ID in a custom field that we've got on the report. We've linked that to a location in payroll. So that's how we've achieved that. So if you're not doing that or you don't have that analysis at the moment, I think you'd find that pretty useful. So I might jump back to our slides now. I'll move to slide 6. So the price, which everybody's interested in the price. So we charge per active employee and it's $8. So what an active employee is somebody in a month who worked, somebody who had a timesheet or somebody who was paid a salary or something like that. So it's often the case that you might have a lot of casual employees that don't work from one month to the next. You don't get charged for them. You just get charged for the ones that are included. And the timesheet conversion tool that we took you through earlier today, that's included in that $8 as well. So you get that for free, the ability to convert ShiftCare timesheets into what we need for payroll. So for zero users that are out there, which I'm sure is probably the majority of you, I just did a little analysis before just so we can see what the actual cost of payroll is. So what we would propose is you would switch off zero, you turn it into a read-only. The payroll module side of things would become read-only. You stop paying for it. You still pay for the accounting. They have a sliding scale with their pricing, but yeah, for 15 employees, it'd be about $3.40 an employee. So there's an incremental cost of having that $8 plan, but that increment is giving you the award compliance we've been talking about today. So we did a little time saving exercise with our clients, a bit of a survey. We found they sort of run from about 15 to 25 minutes per pay run. And that usually used to take a day. So it's about 7.5 hours, 420 minutes. So that's visually what sort of the time savings that you're getting back by automating this stuff, let alone the obviously reduce compliance risk and you're not going to get a fair work fine and that sort of thing later, which they are starting to do. You know, we went to a fair work thing November last year, and they said in 2024, hot on the radar is the care industry. So they're looking pretty closely at it. Cool. So onboarding. So there is a one-off onboarding fee to get this stuff built into your business. So what we do for that fee, we'll talk about that fee in a sec, is we transfer all the necessary payroll data from Xero into your new PayCat system, and we do the whole migration for you. So what we're doing is bring your employee records across, any pay categories, leave categories, stuff like that. We map that to our SHADS template, bringing in the settings for tax, deduction, super, all that sort of thing. All the rates of pay, we attempt to match to the award. So we'll flag it to you if they're over award payments or under award payments. But if you're paying as per the award, we'll just match them up and say, hey, it looks like this employee is a disability level 2.1 or something like that. Bring in all your leave balances and how much you've paid in wages so far this financial year. That's all brought across for you as well. And as I said, we check for any overpayments or underpayments and flag that to you in a report. We give you a 1 hour onboarding session as well to show you how to use it and how to run pay runs and sort of get you set up with that extension that we had a look at. And then you get ongoing support with us with both phone and email. So you can actually phone in to PayCat and say, hey, I've got a question. I'm stuck. How do I do this? And we find people really like phone support. Like people, need a really quick answer. They need to be able to articulate themselves on the run. And sometimes that's a bit hard by email. So we have phone and email support. We've got a webinar offer today for the people listening. So we have a one-off onboarding fee. It's usually $1,500. We actually reduce that to $500. So if you're on this webinar today, or you've registered for it, you can mention that and you'll save $1,000 on the implementation cost. And the way you can get that offer is you just email sales@shiftcare.com. We'll also send out an email after the webinar to everybody who registered and provide them with a link to fill in and express your interest there as well. So over to questions for Paul and myself. I see that the Q&A has been very active, but if you've got any questions.
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions that have come through as expected. I think we need to be careful to whether this is a webinar on how ShiftCare works with PayCat or whether it's just a SHADS webinar on all questions about SHADS. I think obviously some of them are relevant to questions that how do we handle it. So look, there's going to be a lot of my response is going to be that you should probably reach out to Fair Work on some really specific questions about the SHADS Award. But yeah, I might start going through them, Garth, if that's all right, and we can sort of answer some of the questions. I think actually it was interesting. I think we spoke about excursions at some stage, Garth, and someone's asked about that. I would say I think you do have a way of handling excursions, right?
Yeah, we do. So one of the shift types will be excursions, and there's another shift type for the inactive time that you spend on an excursion as well. And you put those two things in. So if I was sort of taking my client on a camp, I might put in an 8-hour shift where I've worked, and then the rest of that shift for the remainder of the 24 hours becomes inactive time. And if it goes over multiple days, we just leave a little 1 hour gap between one day and the next, just so that the system knows that they're separate days, because we don't want to present one long elongated shift that goes over a week. You get a really good result. Yeah.
And I think probably if anyone's really looking at excursion stuff, it might be good for them to have a demo with you guys and go through exactly how you handle that. Yeah, because pretty specific stuff. I think actually there's been a question that's been asked, and I think maybe we should have been a bit clearer at the start, is that yes, PayCat will replace a payroll system like MyOb or Xero, and you won't use that. And no, you can't use PayCat to go into Xero per se. Like, you still need to use PayCat's payroll processing, but then you will put a log into Xero, a journal into Xero for how much you paid your staff. So yeah, just to be clear about that. I did mark one that I was going to answer live. I meant to say that I was going to answer. Someone asked whether you can have a 4-hour shift, an active portion for the sleepover, and then another active shift after the sleepover. Yes, yes, you can. That's pretty common. Most people will do that.
Yeah, that was one of the examples today. So we had Edna, I think, had a active part either side of the sleepover, and also an active part in the middle of the sleepover. So
exactly. I think a question here, someone asking about overtime, a couple of people asking about overtime and how ShiftCare deals with overtime. ShiftCare does do it on a weekly basis. So if you do pay fortnightly, that can add a little bit of complexity, because it's 76 hours for a fortnight. And so, I mean, arguably you could have 70 hours in the first week and 5 hours in the second week. And that would still be below the fortnightly maximum of the SCHADS Award. But ShiftCare will show the red warning in ShiftCare when you go over a daily or weekly amount. So it would show 76 hours. It would show the warning on the first week of that, but it wouldn't show a warning on the second week. Obviously, PayCat itself will just pay it correctly based on that. And I think probably a few people kind of mentioning it, like, it would be good if you had the warnings before you actually went and paid the staff, right? So yeah, it's all great that PayCat's going to pay your staff correctly, but you kind of not want to have it do that anyway. You want to know when you're doing the rostering that, hey, that shift's actually going to cost a fortune because, you know, you haven't given them enough of a break since their last shift or something like that. So look, I will say that currently the ShiftCare doesn't do that, but we do have it on our roadmap to look at that in the future, so that there is warnings coming up when you do roster, and it'll say, hey, you're going to pay a broken shift if you do this shift. Also, this shift is going to pay 3 hours of overtime or something like that. So yeah, it's definitely something we want to tackle, because yeah, you're right. Prevention's better than a cure. We don't want to be paying your staff. Like, it's good that we're going to pay your staff, but we kind of want to make sure that the rostering's done as efficiently as possible as well. Any questions you've seen there, Garth, that you want to tackle?
Yeah, there's probably a lot here. We could spend, how much time we got? 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I've just got one here from Josh Grapes. So maybe I'm not following the SCHADS Award correctly. Doesn't the sleep shift count as hours worked? And so the hours after the sleep shift should also be paid at overtime rates, given it's more than 10 hours of continuous work, even if they aren't paid at a rate of sleepover allowance. So it's an interesting question, because it's really weird wording, and you find that a lot in this award, that it's written a bit funny. And these are the types of things that, when we built this model, we've got you know, fair work rulings on to really clarify this stuff. It does say it's continuous work, but it's sort of more, that wording's more for working out whether the worked part is shift work or not. So you'll often find with SCHADS sleepovers that they end up being night shift either side of it, not overtime. The 10 hours worked is sort of, it's not work and it's not a break, it's the same thing. But when we're working out what was the ultimate end time of this big long shift, well, it was actually 10 o'clock the following morning. It's not necessarily, you know, 10 p.m. the night before. So that's why you end up with night shift. It's not really overtime, so it's not really calculating that 10-hour bit in the middle as OT. I'll just keep going. We've got what's the maximum hours someone can work active awards during the day according to SHAD? So it's 10. 10 is the maximum. And yeah, that's across the award, doesn't matter what sector it's in. We've got, is there any, this one's for you, Peter. Yeah. Do you want to take that one, Paul?
Yeah, which one?
Beatrice Ayres, it says, is there any way to be altered prior to the shifts worked to indicate that scheduling is not SHADS compliant?
Yeah, I think that was what we covered just before.
Yeah.
I think it's also probably a question that's been popped up a couple of times is leave, annual leave and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's probably good to sort of just touch on that.
Yeah.
I think yeah, you're probably well versed in how that works. I'll let you cover that.
Yeah, sure. So leave is a pretty complicated area actually of SHADS. It's like there's a lot of what our rule interpretation does is just make sure, particularly with annual leave, that they're getting the right loading and all that sort of stuff. But just to cover off what the workflow would be between ShiftCare and payroll is that the source of truth for leave would be payroll. You would go into payroll, the employer would request a leave, you would approve the leave, and you'd actually turn that approved leave request into a timesheet as well. So that forces it to get interpreted as part of your week. In ShiftCare, you would then go in and mark that as unavailable time for the employee. So you're just basically blocking a part of a roster out so you don't roster over the top while they're on leave. And then on payday, what it will work out things like, are they getting the higher of 17.5% leave loading or penalties for the weekend? And it'll work out, you know, if the underlying annual leave that they're getting should be a penalty rate, things like that. So it's actually doing a lot of heavy lifting when it's working that out in the pay run. But that's a workflow for it. So it starts off in payroll. It's converted to a timesheet in payroll. You then go into ShiftCare and mark it out as unavailable time.
Yeah, so it'd be your staff would request the leave through the and there's an app, right, that the staff would use for payroll. So it's like an app, and then from there they'll also go into ShiftCare and put in the leave request. So it is separated, but it's it will still ensure that it's all paid correctly and everything like that.
The Deepak's asked, sorry to cut you off. Deepak's
Yeah,
asked me about broken shifts. So he said, what about if we have 3 broken shifts? How do we deal with that case? The answer is with broken shifts, so what we count is not the number of shifts, but the number of breaks. So if you have 3 shifts, you presumably have 2 breaks, and then you pay a higher allowance. And we showed you that on the public holiday for Edna earlier in the video. So that was that scenario. If you have, for example, 4 shifts and 3 breaks, that's actually a breach of the award. It's not actually covered in the award what you do, but it's just considered something you can't do for rostering purposes. I've got a question that's just popped up again about, does PayCat replace Xero? PayCat replaces Xero payroll. So you turn off the payroll module of Xero, which you pay separately for, and you start using PayCat. And PayCat's going to feed that, what we call a journal, that accounting record, every payday of what's happened for payroll purposes, which effectively self-reconciling is quite good. So it actually brings it in as a bill to pay. It's a fake bill, I suppose. The following day, your bank feeds come through, and it's going to automatically, you know, suggest that, hey, this bank feed is the net pay for this bill that we had yesterday. So it's quite good. It's quite self-reconciling the way it works. So accountants and bookkeepers really love it.
So yeah, a couple of questions. Oh, sorry, I was just going to jump in. So someone's asked about overtime and meal pay. So yeah, look, overtime, when a staff member does more than an hour of overtime, they get a meal allowance. PayCat will automatically apply that in.
Yep.
I think another question here is someone saying, like, we use my Xero to apply for leave. Can they go into PayCat? So again, we've just got to reiterate, I think, make sure everyone really understands that you wouldn't use my Xero because you would then move over to PayCat to do your payroll, and they have their own app that staff would use instead, because PayCat's going to replace the payroll side of Xero. Sorry, you go ahead with the one you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, Josh asked if the first 2 hours of overtime is less than the pay rate, like Sunday or a public holiday, it defaults to the higher rate. But then after those first 2 hours, it defaults to 2 hours of overtime. So you very, very keenly picked that up, Josh. So on the public holiday, I think it was the 38th hour happened on the public holiday for Monty. So there were 2 hours to finish our shift off that were paid in overtime rates, we adopt the public holiday as the overtime rate because it's the higher of the two. And that's always the case with employees. They get better off overall. What was I better off overall getting? Was I better off getting time and a half overtime? Was I better off getting double time and a half public holiday rate? So that's the way that works. When we go to the Friday, it dropped back to, that tiered overtime of 2 hours of time and a half and double time remainder.
Someone's asking, can you transition from employment hero to pay cat? I would imagine that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, you can. So Employment Hero, it is a straightforward process. Employment Hero, this award that we've looked at that has been signed off by lawyers is unique to PayCat and it's only accessible to PayCat clients. But you can actually use your existing file and come across to us. It's no problem.
Yeah. Someone's asking if you work a 2-hour shift, do we have to pay 3 hours? I think the answer to that is depends on the classification of the staff member. There's a couple of different types of staff. You can be a social worker or a disability support worker and stuff. So I would say that you would need to classify the staff member correctly in PayCat. And then from there, if you did roster them on a 2-hour and they were supposed to be paid a 3-hour, they will get paid 3 hours.
Yeah, so you're 100% right. There are sectors to the award, and one of the sectors is called social and community services, and that includes disability support workers and other. So if you're in the other category, it's 3 hours. For all the other sectors in the award, it's 2 hours. And that's one of the things that we're like, we have on a rare occasion, we have clients that might, go see client number 1 and their SACS other than disability, and client number 2 is SACS disability. And they have those different, you have to dynamically be able to deal with that. Like, those hours I was working overtime, was it in disability or somewhere else? So it gets a bit tricky. We can handle that. So we can handle the ability to dynamically change a pay condition based on what sector your client is in.
Someone's asking what the definition of a broken shift is. And I think this one's always a really interesting question that I get because, again, I think the award leaves it to a bit of interpretation on how you want to read it. But generally, my answer is that if there's a break between the shift, that's not a lunch break, so it's a 45 or an hour break, then that's a broken shift. It's essentially is there time between the shift that they're not getting paid that isn't a break that's allowed to be a break in the SCHADS Award.
Yeah. I got Sally Randall, Carol Hine, does all this work with MYOB. So we talked a lot about Xero today, like switching off Xero payroll. MYOB is very much the same process. You'll find on your subscription, you pay for accounting, you pay separately for payroll, you turn off the payroll module, and you're sending a journal into MYOB from our software representing the pay run itself. And where conceptually Xero has that thing called tracking categories, MYOB has a thing called job codes. The same idea applies. So if you want to set up job codes for each of your employees, you can achieve you can achieve that integration that way and make sure that your wages and super and everything are divided up by client.
I've got someone asking, after paying a sleepover allowance, do we still have to pay? And again, we're sort of starting to get into SHADS questions, but do we still have to pay if a staff wakes up more than 2 hours? So, I mean, the answer to that is if your staff wakes up for 5 minutes, you've got to pay them overtime. Like, as soon as they wake up and they say they got woken up by the client and they had to attend to the client, then a minimum of 1 hour overtime has to be paid. And then from there, if they're awake for more than 1 hour, then it's whatever it is on top of that. So yes, the answer is yes, you do have to pay overtime for waking up for any period of time during a sleepover.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think the distinction here too is that we are talking today about payroll. So when people start talking about active shifts, they're often talking about billing. And it's a very different, like billing.
Absolutely.
Payroll and SHADS, in NDIS and that sort of thing is a very, very different landscape.
And one of the challenges of being a provider is the challenge of payroll versus invoicing and how to make them align. I've got another question here. What's the rate for Saturday, Sunday night shift? So the award just has a rate for Saturday all day and a Sunday all day. There is no night shift or afternoon rates for weekend work and public holidays.
I've got an interesting question here I'll take on. So does your shift care need to be perfect for PayCat to work? Can we book shift care consultation for someone to help take us through how to utilize the shift most efficiently? We've worked really hard getting documentation in place to say, hey, if this is your scenario, this is what shift care needs to look like. So for example, we laid out in the demo today that your sleepover shift needs to be a worked bit, a sleepover shift, and another worked bit, if that's a scenario. So we've got all that quite well documented. The other thing is that we are utilizing shift types. So with our shift care clients, we're giving you guys a list of shift types to use to satisfy certain circumstances. So we have a special shift type for excursions and a special shift type for 24-hour care shifts and that kind of thing that we teach you how to set up and use.
And I think from a shift care perspective, absolutely, we want to engage with people that are trying to perfect their payroll. And, you know, yeah, from shift care side, absolutely, we'd be happy to do a session with anyone that has questions about their rostering and whether they're doing it efficiently and all that kind of stuff. We've got a bunch of account managers that are keen to help with everyone. Some people are asking about time in lieu. Garth, is there anything you can mention about that?
Yeah, I can. We do handle it. So the way we deal with that is if you have an employee that wants to get time in lieu, so for the people listening, there's an option in the award to say, if I get overtime, swap that out and I want to bank some hours of leave instead. I want to take them later, right? So the way we do that is we tag the employee, and when it recognizes that there's overtime being paid and that tag has been applied to the employee, it'll not pay them those hours and convert them to leave instead. So we can handle time in lieu. When they want to take time in lieu, they're just putting in a leave request for it.
There's so many questions. I think we're not going to be able to answer all of them.
I think the first time ever it's doubled in the time we're trying to answer them. So I think there was 30 questions at the start. There's now 65.
So, yeah, I'm trying to mark them off as we go. Do you have one that you wanted to cover?
Not especially. The thing I'll say is I think we're planning to do just a SCHADS webinar. So just show you guys how SCHADS
I think
works,
that'd be good. Yeah.
You know, put this.
So someone's asking what's the difference between PayCat and QuickBooks. So I think the answer to that is the special rule set that PayCat have that gives you complete compliance on the SCHADS Award. That's the difference. Other than that, the engine behind it is the same. It's just that it's got the thing about PayCat, and the reason why I tell everyone that PayCat's the way to go is because they have that rule set that they maintain. And, you know, when the SCHADS Award gets updated in July, they'll update that straight away. Whereas QuickBooks, they haven't been maintaining their rule set for the SCHADS for a little while from what we've seen. So, you know, that's the difference, and it's a huge difference. Someone said, I've been told that more than 3 shifts is illegal. If there's a small break between them, is it legal? I mean, yeah, because look, the short answer is yes, more than 3 shifts in a day is against the award. But if you're saying it's a small break, 10 minutes, then it's not really 2 different shifts, is it? It's just a 10-minute break in one long shift. So that's how you need to kind of approach it. Don't forget that how you roster in shift care isn't necessarily how payroll interprets a shift. Because if you in shift care, you have to put it in as 2 separate shifts because you've got 2 different staff on it and you want to separate them. But from a payroll perspective, it may see it as one long shift with a 10-minute break in between them. And that's the big difference there with that. So yeah, you could be right. If you had a small break of 10 minutes, then if it's a paid break as well, then it's actually just one long shift, not 2 broken shifts there. Yeah, look, I think unless you've got anything specific that you saw that you wanted to cover, I think we may have to just say that, look, the rest of them, I think a lot of the questions that are left are really SHAD specific. Yeah, I think, someone's here, how does ShiftCare and subsequently PayCat deal with remote work? I think you kind of covered that in one of the staff had a remote on call, right? So you guys do cover that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. So I think in the award of memory, there's like minimum shift lengths for those kind of shifts. So that's why we have those special shift types in there for those. So if you're sitting at home manning the phone or something like that, you can mark that shift appropriately.
Someone's asking
I
about
guess
travel.
quick shout out
between-
to
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, go on. Travel between.
Yeah, someone's asking about travel between clients. So yeah, look, that again, that's not really covered. That's not really per se part of PayCAD. It's more that you would put the kilometers on shifts. The staff, when they're traveling between clients and,
Yep.
and you're charging for provider travel, they would put the kilometers on the shift, and then that would then go over to reimburse the client for that. We do have some big changes coming to ShiftCare in terms of how we deal with mileage, which I'm pretty excited to see. Bit of a sneak preview to tell you that we will be able to deal with provider travel and activity-based transport on the same shift. We'll be able to deal with multiple staff and different kilometers for each staff member on the same shift, which we can't do at the moment. So there's some really exciting changes coming up. We're about to go into a beta test for that. So yeah, it's not far.
Very good.
Oh, all right. I think
there was a hell of a lot of clap emojis in the chat. So that, guys, that's my business partner. I'm very happy.
That's cool. I think people asking about trialing and stuff. Did you already cover whether you do a trial? I may have missed it.
We can do a demo. We don't necessarily do a trial. It's a bit complicated to just start diving in yourself and start using it. So we prefer you've done the training with us to do it.
Of course, because you've got to set up all your staff with all the different pay levels that they're on and everything. So yeah, it's not really something you would spin up a trial, but definitely I think the demo, from what I've heard, it covers everything you need to know about it. I think any specific questions about costs and stuff would be great. I think we're going to give the follow-up that you guys will have in an email to be able to reach out to Garth and the team about, like specific questions about how much it costs for you and all that kind of stuff. Definitely reach out to them. They'll talk to you about it. Awesome. All right. I think we might wrap it up here. Sorry if we didn't get to your questions. Definitely a lot of them will be answered in our SCHADS webinar that we'll do. And I think if you have any specific questions about PayCAD, definitely reach out to the team at PayCAD after that. And you can use the live chat in ShiftCare if you have any ShiftCare specific questions that we didn't get to.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much to Garth and the team, and pretty excited to see some people going on this, because it really will change your lives when it comes to payroll, and hope everyone takes advantage of the offer. Cheers.
See you guys.